Hello, I'm Robert, voluntary fact checker and helping you if you're scared of many things. And this is just the last little bit of my video about Trump and Greenland. And so I've already shown all sorts of reasons why we can be sure that all these things that the journalists are not telling us. I haven't seen it. Have any of you seen any mention of the Supremacy Clause, Article 6, Clause 2? I can't remember any of the interviews or any of the journalists telling us this, that the US itself can't recognise Greenland as part of the US against the wishes of the Greenlanders. It would not count. And if Trump announced that Greenland is an extra US state or it's an extra US territory, then that would be unconstitutional and illegal. And then have any of them explained that Denmark can't legally give Greenland to the United States against their wishes? Have they told us that a sale under coercion by tariffs would not be a legally valid treaty under the Vienna Convention of Treaties, which, like all treaties, is automatically the law of the land in the United States? And I haven't seen one journalist yet mention any of those things. And then lots of people, if any of you reading this have seen this, do say. The nearest I found is just obscure professional legal blogs, which talk about the Vienna Convention of Treaties. And Venezuela, I haven't yet seen anyone talking about the Supremacy Clause. I'm sure Trump's legal advisors will advise him about that. So Venezuela is very different. In that case, Trump was not trying to buy Venezuela for the United States, which, again, he couldn't buy Venezuela either. He couldn't force Venezuela to become a US state either. That would be very illegal as well. And he justified the abduction on the grounds that Maduro is an indicted criminal in the United States. So the United States Supreme Court has ruled that the US can try criminals that are brought to the United States, even if not legally extradited. And then he did the military strikes because the Venezuelan military is undoubtedly not an ally of the United States, or it wasn't at the time. So it's a very, very different situation. There was no way that he could set up a US base in Venezuela or fly in with helicopters and just say, we'd like to fly in a helicopter to abduct your president. Please give us landing permission to do that. Then there's no way Venezuela would have done that, obviously. So it was the only way they could do it. So it's so different from Greenland. It's nothing like it at all. And it's a grey area, but because of the Supreme Court ruling that the United States, if it does abduct, the Supreme Court has ruled if the United States does abduct criminals from other countries, even not legally extradited, that it can actually prosecute them in US courts. That's very unusual. Most countries don't have that. And so that's this situation, and several presidents have taken advantage of that in various ways, including previous unelected leader of Panama was also abducted in a similar way. So there are all these things, and why don't the journalists tell us? So the most basic facts about the Greenland situation, everyone should know these things, because it completely turns it on its head and becomes very clear. And a lot of this noise and fuss would just go away if people widely knew that. And you can't expect legislators to know that necessarily. You can't expect politicians to know that. And if the politicians do know that, then they would be very reluctant to say anything about it to Trump, because Trump doesn't like being contradicted and told that he's made a mistake. Suppose Keir Starmer knows all this. He might well do, if he's got good legal advice. Then he's not going to be saying that. He's very diplomatic and hedges around the bush, as it were. So beats around the bush, sorry, not hedges around the bush. Anyway, so it should be the jobs of journalists to do this, I believe. The journalists should contextualize the news, and when they've had hours of broadcasting about Greenland, in those hours of broadcasting, they should be telling us these things. But instead, they interview lots of people that say, and they look for people saying the most dramatic things. They look at for them experts, and often they get good experts, but often they will choose the experts that are going to say quite dramatic things in one way or another. And they just don't go into this level of depth. So I've been doing this voluntary fact-checking. Do I say that? Yes, when I set it up in 2015, I think it was, most of our posts that people got scared about was a conspiracy theory that it no longer is really being shared much at all since then, and we've never been asked about it for years now. But back then, we are asked over and over again, is a planet called Nibiru going to go flying past and hit Earth? And it's totally fictional, it's not true at all. There's no basis for it whatsoever. But that was our main question that we were asked over and over again in the first few years, until eventually, and we developed some very effective debunks and fact checks to describe in ways to make it very clear to even someone who's got no background in astronomy that it's just impossible, it doesn't make sense. But that's what we were fact checking back then. And also false prophecy claims. And we just maybe one or two stories. I won't actually name the stories because I then have to give you the debunk. I just realised that when I was talking about Nibiru, that I don't want to mention anything scary without giving the debunk. But and then that would make this video quite a bit longer. But we had a couple of mainstream news stories back then that failed the most basic fact check. But most of the stories, it was very rare. And we almost never had to fact check anything from mainstream media, perhaps once a year or so. And now, this is the main thing we ask questions about. Of course, it's partly because Trump is president, and he's always dramatic things he does. But it was before then as well, through Biden's administration as well. It was mainly mainstream media that we're having to fact check. And before that, and Trump again, and right back to middle of Trump's first term, all that time, it's completely changed. Now what we fact check is almost always the mainstream media, and some sensationalist stories as well, but they are supported by the mainstream media, where they just don't tell us the most basic things that we should know. So the two possibilities. One is that the journalists just don't have time to fact check. But why don't they have time now? And they used to in the past. They seem to have loads of time. They spend hours on TV interviewing lots of different experts. So why don't they interview a legal expert on the US Supremacy Clause? Why? I've never seen that on BBC TV with the hours of Greenland coverage that I've looked at. Well, I don't know. I just dip in and skip through it when it's not. I don't watch all of the Greenland news, and then I watch particular segments of things that seem particularly important, or if people say they need help, I couldn't watch all of it. There's just too much of it. But in all that time, I've certainly nothing that I've seen has involved an expert on legal situation. They don't seem to have investigated that. So if they do have the time, then I think so. Either they don't have time at all, but that's not really the case, I don't think. Or given an extra half hour, they will choose to investigate whatever it is that is likely to be quite newsworthy, and give them more interesting story to run. And then it's kind of perverse disincentive, I think, operating. If they skimp on fact checking, they're more likely to hit the headlines. So if you have a whole lot of journalists, and you've got who are competing to try to become the head journalist for BBC or something, and one of them does very, very careful, thorough fact checking, and he would never say anything and publish anything without first of all checking it really carefully. And then got another journalist who does almost no fact checking. And the one who does almost no fact checking will be producing many more stories with much more dramatic headlines, and he'll be the one that will make good and become a top journalist. So, and journalists may have previous experience of fact checking, or maybe just a kind of almost like evolution, that the journalists that get that just by temperament are not inclined to do much fact-checking are the ones that tend to do well in their profession nowadays. I don't think they would have. I think something has changed. I may be wrong, but anecdotally, I think something has changed. But and that there's been more focus on this because there's so much more focus on clicks and views and the number of people that click through to your story about it on the internet, not the number of papers you sell in the streets, and not the number of viewers you get, but the number of people who click on your stories. That's just become so important. And the number of viewers you get compared to other TV channels. So they're competing with Sky News, for instance. They're both vying with each other to say more dramatic things to get the viewers to switch to them, or the ITV or whatever. So I think we need to do something to change this. If just one organisation tries to fix this, we'll likely lose their place in search results. So we need to find something at a higher level to do that. And I'm doing my best. I'm actually in the middle of doing a complaint for BBC Complaints, but I will talk about that in a separately. I don't want to get it off to head off in that direction at this stage in this video. But just to say, I've taken on a BBC complaint about some very serious misreporting by the BBC. Where they didn't check the most basic facts in stories about the Ukraine war. But I don't want to get involved in all that because that'd be another complete new topic that I need to introduce and then do the fact checking myself to help you not be scared by whatever it is that it's about. But it was this is an example of the BBC has done numerous stories where it's clear they just don't have a process of rigorous fact checking in place anymore. They don't just make stuff up like the sensationalist press do, where they run the story on a single tweet or something, but they often they say things that are for instance, they repeat propaganda and they don't fact check it. They repeat dramatic things that Trump says and they don't fact check it. In this case, they're not fact checking any of the things that Trump is saying falsely about Greenland. So this is something I think this needs to be changed in some way, and whether what we can do as voluntary fact checkers, I don't know. But I'm starting where I can by a complaint with the BBC. I'm doing another complaint, and then maybe this time it will come to something, and hopefully we're not on our own. There must be lots of people who are noticing this, gradually noticing it more and more. That the journalists are not fact-checking in the way that they should, then at some point hopefully we'll get some change. Meanwhile, it's loads and loads of us work for us voluntary fact-checkers. I wouldn't have needed to do these videos at all if the journalists were doing proper fact-checking. So meanwhile, we are here and we will do our best to help you through these difficult times where there's so much misinformation and so much, even the likes of the BBC and the New York Times and so on are dramatising something like this. It's just everywhere in the mainstream news. And nobody is explaining these very basic points that I went through in my two videos. They would remove a lot of the drama from it and make it much less dramatic and much more of a side story. And it would take away a lot of the power that Trump has. If it wasn't for all the... He plays the... Like they say, he plays the press like a fiddle, as it were. He knows exactly the right sort of story that will hit the headlines from his background as an entrepreneur and as the host for The Apprentice. It's all about getting attention and getting in the news, and I think that's what he's still doing as president. It's all about the advertising, as it were, the free advertising of getting everywhere. That's his instinct. If you've got some free advertising, go for it. And so I think this is basically Trump looking for free advertising for his administration to try and trying to make the United States seem big in some way. I think that's what he's doing here, really. just for commotion for the sake of commotion, in order to get attention, in order to as kind of advertising for the US presidency. And I think he probably has the philosophy there's no such thing as bad press or something. So anyway, so hopefully this helps a little bit, both if you're scared and also with this whole thing about journalism, and to try and get a perspective of why journalists do behave in the extraordinary ways that they do nowadays. So I forgot to say, if you go and look at the video description, I put a link to this my blog post that all this is about. And I have a few things to do. If I can't remember from these videos, I've got to add a section on tariffs. And I think there's something else I have to do, so I'll do that, and I'll update I'll update it, and then and you click the video description, you get the latest version anyway, whatever it is, and I'll add these videos to it. So that's 3 videos I'll add to it. And if you are very welcome to join our Facebook forum. Well, you can join Facebook as well. It's still running, but I'm most active in the I can't comment or post in Facebook at the moment. At least I'm very wary about doing it, because the Facebook algorithm falsely detected my voluntary fact checking as spam. So I managed to fight off this spammer by simply not contributing there for it's now several months, and and then I changed my password, because that was what Facebook told me to do. It said change your password and you can then protect yourself from the spammer. So I changed my password to protect myself from the spammer that was doing all these outrageous voluntary fact checks with all the links and the videos helping people with their fears. And I managed to fight off that spammer. That's how the algorithm will see it. And so I'm still on Facebook, but I am very cautious about doing any more voluntary fact checking, because apparently to the Facebook algorithm it very closely resembles spam, the way I do it. So I'm doing it on the forum instead, and so that's where it's all at. So there's if you go and look at the end of here, so you've got the Facebook group. Oh, I don't have the latest version here. I should be saying Facebook group. I should have the latest version. Oh, so yes. I better fix that. I've got an old version there. So somehow I managed to get an old version with the help here. So for more help, Scared Not Story Debunked, you should please go to our forum for that, because that's where that's all set up for voluntary fact checking. But it's far better than the Facebook group, although the Facebook group does continue for legacy reasons. We've still got people there that are doing fact checking, but it's far better and it's far better set up in the Facebook. We've got a custom form that's actually coded so that it's optimal for voluntary fact checking, and everything is set up for that. So I'll fix that, and then I'll update this with the correct text there. I think I must have copied and pasted from somewhere that has the wrong information there, out of date information. So anyway, that I'll just finish this at this point, and hopefully that you're less scared as a result of this, and hopefully we've been helped.